Well, thank you so much. Must have been a task. 5 essays being read out. And let's give her a round of applause for that, please. Really. And very, very precise. You deserve that glass of water. So I sit on hallowed grounds because, as she mentioned, this is where in 2008, the shooting of 3 Idiots took place. And I had just begun writing. And then in between shots, the director said, hey, let me also give some gyan. So he came over here and gave a little masterclass on writing because he's a writer himself. One thing that stood out for me was, he said, every scene should either make you laugh, should make you cry, or should be dramatic. The LCD principle. And therefore, we'll try and keep that LCD principle going in today's session also. As I ask these wonderful individuals, the authors and fellow alumni, we'll try to cover 3 things in these 40 minutes. Why write in the first place? Yeah. Are there benefits of writing, really? And how do you get your work published? If we can cover that in 40 minutes, I'm sure it'll be paisa vasool for those in the audience. Correct? Excellent. So, Author Sibichan, I'm going to call you Author Sibichan. Why did you start writing in the first place? I mean, what inspired you to write? Why write?
Hello. Thanks, Tony. This is a wonderful question. I write primarily for myself. I always felt that writing is therapeutic. It is a food for my soul. It is something like de-stressing myself when I start writing. And I always feel that my reader is in front of me as I keep writing. It is something like I'm conversing with him, I'm narrating something to him. And also, I feel like reading my book again and again. That's all.
Thank you, Tony, for that question. I call myself an accidental writer because I never planned to start writing. It was a short story of mine which my friend kind of dug out from the computer and said, you must send it to some kind of contest, and that's where it all started. And then, of course, that's what actually started the writing journey. And once that started, I think what happens, as Sibichan also kindly, rightly said, you actually write because everybody has a story within him or her, and that must be told. I think that's fundamentally why we write. The rest, of course, whatever happens is, Lord Almighty. That's all.
Yeah. My reason for writing is slightly different and also very similar to what you said. The first reason why I started writing was I worked in corporate for about 25 to 30 odd years, and I created some of the brands which may resonate with you. For example, McDowell's Signature, the name I gave. I was the first guy who dreamt in this city of making bagpiper whiskey, India's largest and the world's largest, and we made it. And we came out with a cult line, which many of you may remember. I'll just say 2 words, Khoob Jamega Rang. What is after that? Yeah, so this was not made for you. You're not the drinkers of bagpiper. But the fact that you remember it as a cult line, right? It touched your heart. Then if you watch IPL matches, the RCB logo that you have, I was given the job to revive RC in 2000. And we did the pack and we put this logo there, believing that whenever an event happens, an RC event, they just take that logo and put it on that. It becomes a RC event. And finally, I became the CEO of JK Helen Curtis. So the DO category that year in 2002 was 66 crore. I reimagined DO category and I said, I'll not sell DO as DO, I'll sell it as perfume. The category today is 9,000 crore and we made the elephant dance. So when I look back into my corporate career, the way I built this brand was very simple principles, very commonsensical principles. So what I did, and the reason therefore I wrote this book is that if I can create brands like this, and I'll just stand up to show you my height. My height is very less. My voice is not very strong. Neither am I physically built. Now, if a guy like me can do these brands in India, then why can't you? And I've shared these simple principles. If you follow, there's no way that you just can't create these brands. So this was the first reason for writing the brand, writing the books. The second reason was As you grow old and when you reach my age, which many of you haven't, then if you want to be happy, you should visit 3 places. So 2 I will tell you, and third I think you should never. The first is you should visit hospitals. When you visit hospitals, you will realize that to be healthy is so good. Second is you should visit crematoriums. Then you realize that being alive is so good, right? And I'll stop here because that is where the second reason. So there is a saying that says that if you visit a crematorium, the largest amount of dreams are buried there. Most people with their dreams go under the ground. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to die empty. I wanted to die empty. I wanted to take out everything that I had been blessed with this good education, with the corporate career I had, and I wanted to take it out and share with the rest of the world. So that was the second reason for writing these books. And I guess this is the key reason. And the third reason was what my father had told, which my mother kept on telling me. My father had told in Hindi when I had not even come to IIM Bangalore. He says, in Hindi I'll say, and then in English, he says, Bete, naam kamana paisa nahi, meaning earn name, not money. The thing that happened is when I pursued name, I also got money in ample measures. Now what he meant was naam kamana was basically, you should be known for what work you have done. And lastly, what I want to say, and this probably is a bit narcissist, but not really so. All my entire career of 25 years, I was creating brand for others, like McDowell, United Spirits, now Diageo, or J.K. Helen Curtis, Raymond. And I said, yeah, if I can make brands for these people, there is a guy like me, I'm also a brand. Why can't I make myself into a brand using the same principles? So I took to writing. And today I'm rather happy to say that because of what I did, the same principles I followed in corporate to build brands, I followed in writing book. Because of that book, in a minuscule way, I too have become a brand. So just to put it across, I created these brands which using very simple principle I wanted to share because the rest of the world can use it. I wanted to die empty. And third is if I could create brands for other, I wanted to test if those same principle can create an unknown person into a brand. A minuscule way I have succeeded. Those were the reasons. Thank you.
Rajesh, I think you have done that LCD principle. D is for sure, dramatic, for sure, very inspiring. And I will ask you a question, Sandeep. Yeah, may not be worded in a different way. So, Sandeep, we are all good at making frameworks, like Rajesh gave 3 things, LCD, etc. So, we also have a framework created, 5 ways how not to get your book published or be an author. The first one is, don't put in the time to develop your craft. Anything on that?
I also actually wanted to answer the previous question, why I started writing. And unlike the other panelists, I have very selfish interest. I started writing in the early 20s, when I was in my early 20s, and this is how it started. In your early to mid 20s, you start dating. So I went for a date with a lady, and I told her I'm writing a book. I'm writing a book on the dating market in India. Her first question was, will I be featured in your book? I was like, let's see how this goes. And I noticed the entire power equation change where instead of me trying to impress her, she was trying to impress me. And this is a trick I started trying on dates, one more date, another date, another date. Then I said, writing is an incredible source of power. Then I realized, why not try this in office? So I went to the partner of my project and I said, do you know I'm writing a book on consulting? His first question was, will I be featured in the book? And I said, let's see how it goes. The next day, he started treating me a lot better. I started saying he was recognizing me. He started asking me things like, I hope you got your weekend off. These are unheard of in consulting. So that's when I realized writing is so powerful in terms of getting your journey started. So I'm slightly different. I think all 3 of you are very noble. I'm very selfish in my interest in terms of that. To come to your question in terms of I think as a writer and someone who has done this for some time, it's very important to polish your craft. And how do you polish your craft is the question. What works for me is I have often seen the best of movies. So I have seen movies of Christopher Nolan again and again and again and tried to understand what framework is he following, how are lines written. I've seen series, web series again and again. I've read a lot of books. And I think my greatest source of learning has been the world of movies, the world of web series, and just to understand how those script writers have seen those movies. So if you want to be a good writer, it's very, very important that one, you're a good reader, and secondly, you watch a lot of content that is available online and shamelessly copy what is the best practice.
Picasso's steel. Again, well done. The L is working. So there was D there, and then L here. Excellent. Another principle on what to do to not get your book published is don't reach out to people who can introduce you to the right people. So all of you all have been, and this is of course to Bhaskar. We may be individually great in our profession. One would be a brand head, the other would run our own firm. But then writing is a different ecosystem. You're part of the lit world where you have no real experience. So with the statement, don't reach out to the people who can introduce you to the right people. Any thoughts on that?
There is a fairly nice anecdote on this. So when I started writing, I reached out to another alum of IIM Bangalore who's already an established writer. I'll not take names here. And I said that, I need to do this. That person said, you must get a literary agent, because if you're going to reach out to publishers, it's going to find its way into the trash can. So I said, okay, can you introduce me to one? So he says, yeah, sure, I'll introduce you to the person, who's helped me and so on. And I said, okay, fine. He said, but then the person was hesitating for a bit. And the person gave me the contact anyway. So when I reached out to that literary agent, I got a very, very rude response. And a very, very, very large literary agent. And without reading anything, I just got immediately, within the next 3 seconds, I got a response from that lit agent saying, I'm sorry, I cannot take up your work. And then I realized that this particular alum had a problem with her. And he was just trying to see whether, if the problem still exists. So that was my first rude awakening to the whole world of don't reach out to people who you think can help you. But actually speaking, it's not true. I mean, this is one stray incident, but if you ask me, frankly, people who are invested in you, whether you call them alpha readers, beta readers, or whatever, they will actually help you to polish your craft. They will actually help you to tell you, because what happens is when we start writing, we get so invested and we get so, selfishly, possessive of our work that we don't realize that we may be making mistakes. So that is a very important part, especially if you want to reach out to people who are of the same audience group. So if I'm writing a young author, for example, or young adult fiction, I should reach out to that age group who will be my alpha and beta readers. So there are people who will help you, but yes, sometimes it doesn't work that way.
Sibi, you want to pick up on that from your own experience?
I too partially agree with him on this particular experience which we had. How many of you would like to write a book? Good, quite a good number. I was very impatient. Every time when I start writing an article, I want it to be published next day in the newspaper. Very impatient. So when I finished my first manuscript for making people pay, I sent the manuscript to 2 big publishers and 1 not so big publisher, normal publisher. The not so good publisher, within about 1 month, he sent me a draft agreement. He said, yes, you would like to publish your book. I was so happy. I thought, I'll go hell with this big publishers. I'll go with this person. And next 3-4 months, he published the book. Just day after it got released, I got communication from the big publisher. Yes, we are considering publication of your book with some modification. See how impatient I was, and I missed a very good publisher. The second book, When the Boss is Wrong, I approached a big publisher, mainstream publisher. They published it, but it was an ordeal for me. 6 months to 1 year. Every sentence they judged. Every word they criticized. This is not the way, this word should be changed. This gets misinterpreted. You will be got into trouble from your own boss. Where is the referencing for this quotation? I said, why should I publish a book? But after about 8 to 9 months, the book has come so well. It might have cut into half what I have written. Beautiful book now, When the Boss is Wrong, in the 9th reprint now. So the third book, I'm narrating this because you pick up some points from this. The third book, you just got cheated, Understanding White Collar Crime. I did not give it to Rupa. I thought I'll go to an academic publisher. I went to Sage. And the Rupa came to know immediately that I have submitted a manuscript because agreement says, if you have published a book from Rupa, you have signed that agreement contract, your next book should be given to them. They have the first right to reject. I didn't know that. They said, you send us the summary we would like to see. I sent it. I thought they will not select. There was some delay. Meanwhile, I signed the contract with Sage. Because I'm impatient. No? I'm impatient. I wanted next day the book should come. And then Rupa said, we would like to take up the book. I said, I already signed with the Sage. No, don't bother. Don't bother. You can violate the contract. We would like to take this book. So why I'm saying this, why I'm narrating this personal experience? First thing, don't be impatient. Secondly, try your luck with big publisher first. Don't go for mediocre publishing. Because there are three types of publishing. One is self-publishing. If you're so impatient like me, if you want to publish your book next day, self-publishing is the best. You have to just pay money. They will print it for you. They will give back the copies. Second one is vanity publishing. Vanity publishing is there are a lot of good publishers. Some of them are from IIMs. But there also you need to give money. And they will design it. They will edit it for you. And they will do little marketing also. And the third, the toughest thing is the mainstream publication. I would like you to try first a mainstream publisher who will threadbare check up every sentence, dissect every word in your book, and finally a masterpiece will come. So this is what I would like to share, Tony.
Wonderful. So the C is taken care of, which is cry, the trauma you have to go through, etc. So the LCD principle, C, you've done. So well done, everyone, so far. We're on track on the LCD principles right now. I still want to stick to why write in the first place. And this is for Rajesh. Rajesh, are there any tangible benefits to writing? I mean, what have you gained? You were anyway this top honcho at Diageo, building brands for others. But what would the tangible benefits be as a writer?
Well, there are many tangible benefits when you become a writer. For example, in our country, there are some people who have, there's a hierarchy of importance. So when I go and say I'm from IIT, IIM, there's obviously the door open. But when I go and say I'm from IIT, IIM and a Penguin best-selling national author, then not just doors, but a few doors open. So that is one thing that is very, very important to understand, that in our country, writers are revered. And sir, as you said, if you are an author from a well-known publishing house like Penguin, then I think your acceptability in the system increases a lot. So this is what I would say is the big thing. But then again, in my context, I'll just go back and answer. My thing for the main reason for writing was that I wanted to die empty. Because I genuinely believe, and this is more philosophical than, tangible, it's very intangible. You may have read this book called How to Measure Your Life by Professor Clayton. Right? He's a Harvard professor, no more. So he had narrated a small story, and I want to narrate that and then contextualize it to myself. Please read this book. It's called How to Measure Your Life. It's a very popular course in Harvard Business School. He says that, let's say, I'll just take Sandeep's example because let's say he's from 2009, I am from 1985. Let's assume that I go, let's take this event. Right? Today is 29th. When I go up to God, God will ask me on 29th of October 2023, I gave you this opportunity to address this people, to tell them, how they can become authors or how they should write. Did you use that opportunity to actually motivate them to write? And then I will say to God, God, I gave all the anecdotes that were at my command to convince the people why they should write for the right reason. right? What is the entire message here? The message is that there is, and this is from Professor Clayton, it's not my thing, I've just contextualized, that the day you go up, God will ask you every opportunity that is given to you, did you use it or did you misuse it? And I will say by writing the book, I really used it, to communicate all the learnings that I had got through good education and through this corporate life to communicate this. So that is the thing. And the third most important thing I just want to tell you, my mother is no more, she passed away very recently. The biggest sense of pride that my mother had was that I'm an author. And she used to very, very proudly tell all her friends and relatives that, my son is an author. So much so, she's no more now, she just recently moved on. She was in the hospital with a broken bone. When the doctor came, she told the doctor, not about my IIT, not about my IIM education or the brands I had built. She told the doctor in Hindi, "Mere ladke ne kitab likhi hai." And then she looked at me, says, "Inko copy de dena." Meaning my son has written this book. And then she looked at me in a commanding and a loving manner and she said, "You should give the 2 books to the doctor." Now, those are the things which are not measurable. But I think at the end of this life, it makes life worthwhile.
How many of us are inspired to write your first book after listening to that? Wonderful. So, Sandeep, question to you. Lots of hands who want to write. Perhaps not everyone's written or published. How, just 2 or 3 things to just start writing. I've got no experience, never written a diary in my life, but something that will just make me start writing.
So the first thing I want to tell you is a successful writer is number 1, an excellent marketer, and 2, a good writer. Never confuse the order. So if you want to start writing, and the way I did it is, given my business school education, I opened an Excel sheet, which I was most comfortable with. And I was very clear. So I worked backwards. So I said my book has to be 175 to 200 pages. This generation doesn't read that much. So, and I wrote down 100 instances, 100 things I want to write in an Excel sheet, just 1-line instances. And then I started clubbing them into chapters, saying these 5 instances, chapter 1, these 5 instances, chapter 2. And then every Sunday, for about 2 to 3 hours, I took 1 instance or 2 instances and started writing 2 to 3 pages on it. So by the end of 1 year, I had a manuscript that was ready. If you're planning to write a book, here are some things you should be careful about. Number 1, the perfect time to start writing is today, is not tomorrow. At least I used to think that tomorrow I will have a better plot, my life will be easier, my job will be easier, God will be kinder. It doesn't work that way. So the perfect time to start writing is today. That's 1. Secondly, the toughest job is to turn out the first manuscript. It is the toughest job to turn that out. It's always easier to edit that manuscript. So you have to work on getting that manuscript. So what worked for me is writing every Sunday, doing this for a year and turning out the manuscript. The one point I also want to touch, if you remember the first line I said, a successful writer is a brilliant marketer first and then a good writer. I was having a conversation with the editor of the Economic Times early 2020, and she was asking me, how are you going to go about this writing journey? And she said, how strong is your social media profile? I said, I have 800 followers on LinkedIn. She said, that's really bad. Nobody is going to read. You can never be a successful writer. And this is a line that she said, which really flipped the switch on in me, that if you can't sell yourself, the world is not going to do it for you. And that's the day I went on social media and I absolutely started marketing myself to the point of being a show off, to the point of being shameless. And that's what I do. So if you want to start writing, you have to write the manuscript, but you have to start pursuing your social media journey in parallel. Because when you go to the big publisher like Penguin, the first question the editor, when they asked me is, why will you sell 25,000 copies? And then if you say, I have 50,000 followers and 200 publications, the conversation becomes much easier.
Makes sense. Absolutely makes sense.
Can I add to it? Can I just give a slightly different perspective than Sandeep? people ask me, because I'm from marketing, so in marketing, when you launch any brand, what's your TG, what's your, the same thing that he said. So when people ask me, who did you write this book for? And sir, like you said, you speak to your thing. My story is slightly different. I write this book for myself. I've not written it for any audience. I've written this book for myself, believing that if I fall in love with the content of my book, then there'll be enough people with my sensibilities who too will fall. Now, where did I get this idea from? And that is what is creativity. If you go to chefs in hotels, the best chefs are not those who go and sample their new recipes and get a feedback and improve. The best chefs are those who believe in themselves and they actually create the recipe. And if they fall in love, then there'll be enough people with their sensibilities, they believe, who will fall in love. So I've written this book for myself. The second piece of the best advice that I got was from my son. My son became a Penguin author before me. So I was proudly telling him, hey, his name is, in fact, incidentally, he's also a stand-up comic. So I was telling Kautuk, hey, Kautuk, now, like I'm equal to you. But tell me an advice what I should follow to write this book. And I think his advice was, there were two advice that he gave, which was, I think, fantastic. He says, Dad, now that you've got a contract from Penguin, congratulations. But still, just evaluate. You should write a book that will add wisdom to the library and not weight. And because, I'm not very sure whether he's proud of me from being from IIM, so he took the IIM Bangalore library example. He says, Dad, write, because you're writing on management, so Dad, write a book which will not add weight to IIMB's library, but it will add wisdom. That's the first thing. And the second thing, which I think was touched partially, sir, by you, is I was telling him, I can write example of Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. He looked at me very quietly. He says, Dad, I'll tell you something. If they want to read about Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos, they'll go to the real source. Why will they come to you? Write your own experiences. Write your own experiences. Be vulnerable. And when you write, for God's sake, don't come out looking like a hero. Meaning, write an authentic content which actually portrays what you went through. Now, these were the three reasons which I took. So even in my book, I've given scores of examples from my life. People used to say, yaar, who wants to read about you? The fact is that people do want to read about what I went through because I'm so ordinary. And because I'm so ordinary, people feel, yaar, if this guy can do it, so can I. And that is what inspires them.
Absolutely spectacular. Going back to what Mr. Mihani said, in fact, all of you have captured it. He said, one of course was the LCD principle. Second was, he said, write for yourself. If nobody else likes your work, at least you will like it. And third, of course, was use pearls from your past. This is exactly what you said, from your own space. From the pearls from your past as such, how much of those pearls are in each of your books? Can I just assume everybody's got pearls from your past, Rajesh? Bhashwar.
So, I've been sitting here and I've been kind of wondering, people have got published by Penguin and the large publishers, and I have not got published by anyone big, and I have written both fiction as well as non-fiction. All right? And to sell fiction is one of the biggest challenges you will have. It is impossible to sell fiction. I've written a book in the year 2013, which is still looking for a publisher. Because I don't want to change the story. And so one of the things I want to tell you is that where it's important, the most important thing, and I think that's something Tony touched about, if you've got a story within yourself, that must come out. Whether it comes out in self-publishing, whether it comes out in vanity, whether it comes out for a small, big publisher, it doesn't matter. Because you are writing for yourself. At the end of the day, you cannot judge what the market wants. You have no way of knowing. But you know what you want, what catches your fancy, what grabs you, and that is what you must write on. And I believe, since I've written a fair amount of fiction, I've got some 35 short stories. Most of them have been picked up by the likes of Sudha Murthy, Amitav Ghosh. If you look at my book, he's endorsed it as well. It's very important to bring out your life experiences, because all of us are watching and seeing things happen every day, and each one of them can be turned into a story. Okay, so if I went on a flight once, I saw a lady who was from the village. Everybody was looking down at her. She was obviously not class. And she was actually going to collect her son's remains who had died in the war. So when we landed at the airport, the army guy came in with a salute and took her out. And that's when everybody realized who she was. That turned into a story. I was once traveling on a train, and there was a blind beggar who was trying to sell toys. And he lost a toy, okay? And he was frantically looking for it. And he went all the way back, and so there was this rich guy sitting who said, how much is this toy? You know, and he just gave him some money. And that guy went all the way back, found the toy, and came back to return that money. That became a story. So all of us face experiences all through our lives which others need to experience. And that's why you must write.
The final question before I open it up to everybody else is for all of you all, in a sentence you could give. I'll just give a statement. See if it resonates, and that becomes your final parting gift to those who are in the audience. Be generous. There are a lot of generous people out there. That becomes your parting line as advice to all those who want to write their first book. What comes to your mind?
Maybe when you come to generosity in book writing and book reading, I would like to say one thing is that, like since all of you would like to, some of you would like to write a book, and which book you should write, you go to a bookshelf and look for a book which you wanted and you are not finding it, then write one. Today morning I came very early. There was nobody in the auditorium. I walked this side and went to the library. So the director is here, let me share with that. I went to the library inside and I asked the librarian, the staff there, how many PGPs step into library and read book? I have come to IIMB library many times. I found empty tables. And if at all somebody is there, they'll be having a laptop with them and going through the notes. They get a safe place in the library without any disturbance. So we should introspect ourselves. Why should we write when there are no readers? And maybe, as I said in the beginning, writing can be therapeutic. You write for yourself. Or, as our friend Sandeep said, you need to be a selfish marketer of the book, of your own book. I share the sentiments of all the authors. I feel you also share the same sentiments with me. When you narrate your own experience, it will sell. I was writing non-fiction for some time, and I quickly changed to fiction for the simple reason that I should not be caught by writing something which people don't like, system don't like. So I shifted to fiction. And when I start writing stories, and in case somebody criticizes me, I would say, this is not my word, the character spoke. And when I published my first novel, it is substantially biographical in settings, but story is totally imaginative. I got released that book in Kottayam Public Library by a governor. And once the books were sold, by evening I started getting messages from people after reading the book. That's the difference of experience sharing, something which you think touch your heart, write it. So I think all of you, those who want to write a book, start writing now itself. Start with a microblog, start a Facebook post, LinkedIn post, and then come with some big blogs, then articles, and start writing a journal. Every day, start writing. If I was on September 8, my birthday, normally I do some resolutions. This time I thought, what should I do? I wrote 8 points, which I will do every day, and the night I will evaluate. One task, 1 point. And there is one task which has 2 points. That was write 500 words every day. That was a very hard task for me. Write 500 words. Well, now September 8, my birthday, now to the last 2 months over, 1.5 months over, I got 2 points only on 3 occasions. Okay, but 1,500 words written. So start writing, start penning something, though you have to come out of the writer's block. Thank you.
So your question was, what you must you be generous with? Yeah? All right. So, I firmly believe that all of us, no matter how many years, months, days you have been writing, you are an apprentice. You never become a master of the craft. And because you continue to learn, you must be extremely generous with accepting criticism. That is very important because it can be something which can hugely put you off. Because you believe that your work is the next best thing to sliced bread. All right? But it does not work like that because you are so invested in it so be very generous about accepting criticism. Be generous about allotting time to it. Okay, so if you see someone like Jeffrey Archer, he keeps writing 1,000 words every day and he keeps talking about it, saying that I sit at my desk and I hammer away. Even if I throw away those 1,000 words, it doesn't matter, but I must produce them. So that kind of discipline is, you have to be generous with discipline in writing. Because, sometimes nothing will happen. You'll be producing, so you must be generous about that. The third thing is, be very generous about character conflict. Very often what we do is when we write, we're trying to chase a plot, we're trying to chase a story. The character conflict drives a story, for me, not the other way around. So understand, so whenever we are looking at experiences around ourselves, be very sensitive to character conflict. You'll find stories coming out. All right? That's my response.
Well, I have a slightly different take about generosity. It is more to do with education. So what happened is after I quit my corporate life to share my knowledge, I had an opportunity to teach a brand management course at IIM Indore to the PGP students, and I taught them for almost 7 years. Now, what I did was, while I was teaching them, and I thought was cutting edge brands in 2008 about Facebook, Apple, Tesla, Alibaba, I evolved my new rules of business, which I shared in the class, which eventually became a book, which is a national bestseller. Now, what I used to do is, when I was teaching in IIM Indore, I had this YouTube channel which was actually supported by a magazine called Founding Fuel. Now, I used to put out this thing, and Founding Fuel incidentally started with my video channel, The New Rules of Business. So what I used to do is, whatever I taught in IIM Indore brand management class, I put it out as a video. Now, what was I doing? And everybody told me, yeah, if you put out the videos, then why will students come to class? And actually it worked the other way around. What did I do? I followed a rule that I had put in the business, in the new rules of business. You know who's your strongest competitor? There is nobody you have to compete with. You have to compete with yourself. And what you have to do, if you have to actually constantly keep on growing, is you have to disrupt and destroy yourself. If you don't disrupt and destroy yourself, somebody else will come and do it. You might as well do it. So what I did was, whatever content I taught, which was cutting edge, which was loved by the students, I put it out on YouTube. And because I put those content on YouTube, I was forced, compelled, disciplined to come out with new and more interesting content. And as I did it, my book became better and better. So the generosity, so there is this philosophical principle which you must remember, which most people forget, and I want to share this with you. The more you give, the more you get. You know what it says, this is a Zen story, and also in our philosophy, we have a cup filled with water. The more water we give out, which is in a way help others, serve others, share with others, the cup becomes empty. But nature conspires to fill that cup again if you are disciplined and perseverant. And in my case, what has happened, when I am more generous, the more I've shared, the more I've got, and I have benefited a lot more out of it. Thank you.
So I'm going to take, again, a selfish narrative, given I started that. So I think it's very important you are generous to yourself. I will tell you about my own journey. I've written 4 books. It's been nearly 13 years. My first book came out in 2011. And you have to understand with writing, this is ground reality, that it's a very difficult profession. You don't get big publishers. You don't make money. The royalty you make, you can't eat a meal at the IIMB mess here. So 2011, I got my first book. It was with a tier 2 publisher. I didn't have a good experience with an agent. Book did okay. 2016, my second book came out. My best book till date, absolutely bombed, didn't sell. 2020, my third book came out. 2021, it hit the bestseller chart. After 11 years of writing, I hit the bestseller charts. 2023 March, my fourth book, How Business Storytelling Works, came out. It's 32 weeks on the bestseller chart. Now, had I not been generous to myself during those 10 years when I was largely a failed writer, I would not have had a book which was 32 weeks on the best-selling chart today. So it's very important when we talk of generosity, you're generous to yourself, that you can tell yourself, this is difficult. You will hear a lot of fairy tales saying, I went the first day, I got a big publisher, I got a 3-book contract. Doesn't happen. It took me 11 years to get a 3-book deal from Penguin. It took me 13 years to become a national best-selling writer. So you have to understand there's 10 years of struggle, there's 10 years of criticism, there's 10 years of self-doubt, there is 10 years when you're really asking yourself if I'm even cut out for this, 10 years if this is even worth it. But if you're generous to yourself in that 10 years, the 11th year is probably where the pot of gold lies. So that's my only take on generosity.
Well, thank you so much. All of you have been extremely generous. What I mentioned was be generous because there are a lot of generous people out there. But this is what I meant when I wrote my first book. I had the feeling that there are people willing to help me. So I'll end up gate crashing into somebody else's book launch, meet a lady called Shiny Anthony, who is Chetan Bhagat's only editor. I tell her that, hey, I've written a book, can you edit it? She said, my eyesight is bad. But the good part was, she said, send me a synopsis, let's see. I sent my entire manuscript. In about 3 days, she said, read it, loved it, call me. My principle really is that assume there are people out there willing to help you. And they will be there. Just don't assume, oh yeah, he's busy, or that person is too big, or you know what, people in general don't help. Somebody has helped us, and therefore somebody will be there to, you're also there to help somebody else also. So dear members in the audience, after the session is over, you can always walk up to any of these authors and ask, hey, 2 tips please. Can I get that as a yes from all of you? Yeah, so yeah, there you have. We will now keep it open for, do we have 5 minutes of Q&A? Are we through? All right. One volunteer to help us with the mic, else we are open to Q&As for any of the authors over here. Any questions? There. The mic is closer here, but then if you can also. Yes, sir.
Yeah, can I go ahead? I have a question
My
actually.
request is just introduce yourself and then a specific short question.
Okay. I'm Shankar Chandrasekhar, PGP 2003-5 batch, and I'm doing program management with Infosys now. So anybody who wants to build a career in IT can consult me.
Not that much, but
Okay. Yeah, I had a question. I see a lot of varieties of books, fiction, non-fiction, management. But personally, what suits me seems to be autobiography. But I've been postponing it, like I'm not yet ready for that yet. When do I know I'm ready to write an autobiography? Is there a specific?
See, one of the biggest problems of writing any story is that memory is fickle. So you should start creating the chapters now. Don't worry about what happens later. You can always review it. So write it as it comes. So take one chapter because a lot of your life has happened. So write about it. Start writing now, as Sandeep said.
So
And
when is
others
the best age to do a publishing?
What is the best age?
Best time to do a publishing?
5 years old. 5 years old is when you should have your first book, ideally.
You had a very beautiful life. You had a wonderful life. Do you want to write a biography, no? You had a very wonderful life?
I feel so.
Then it will not sell. If you had a tough life, you faced challenges, you had bottlenecks, you had thorns in your life, please write it. It will sell.
Thank you.
Katharsis, yes.
Can I just add one last part? I think there's no concept of time when it comes to writing. There's no concept of time. I became an author after I was 60, right?
Okay.
So there is no age for thing. But the only thing that you got to ask yourself, and nobody in this world can answer that question. You've lived a life, you know you've lived a life. Has your life inspired you? So for example, if we believe in reincarnation, would you ask God to create you as you are? How inspired has your life been to you? If your life has inspired you, then don't bother about others. And if you really honestly write, like what Sir said, about your success and failure and the slaps, life is about 30 slaps. If you are willing to write about those 30 slaps, how life gave you and how you dealt with it, and despite that you came up, it's very good. Because the most exciting biographies are not that you were born into Reliance and you became the chairman of Reliance. That I think is not the story. The story is that you were born into a Dharavi slum, and despite all the difficulties and hardship that you had, you became the president. So may I recommend one book you should read, which has just been released, I think, a few days back by Adam Grant. It's called Hidden Potential. Please make a note, please read it. It just got released recently. And my only thing to you is, if you find your life exciting and inspiring, then don't worry about others. Write for yourself.
I hope you're right.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
We'll take another
One
question
question at a
only
time.
before, in the
Just
interest
one
of time.
quick thing I wanted to add. Sir, please write, because from what these gentlemen have been telling you, it's if you feel your life has not been very tough, etc., you'll have to then start writing fiction. So if you want to write an autobiography, please write whatever it is. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
But thank you for the question. Really appreciate it. One last question and then we're through. Oh, somebody else got the mic. Yeah, all right.
So, I'm Ayushi Agarwal and I'm a PGP 2017 batch. So, Sivichan, since you mentioned right about the struggles, etc., there's also a trend, especially on LinkedIn, that even if people have been born into decently well families, got good education, they try to bring about, oh, I've had such a difficult life and this and that, and now I'm doing this. So, people have actually got bored also out of it, that, okay, there's no point in just faking it out.
I like this question. Because all teenagers, see, as people like us, no, some of us, not you, we are all old generation. We like to advise. Every day morning, I decide I will not advise anybody. Next 1 hour, I will start advising. Go to your point. See, people of new generation, they are sick of advisors. They're sick of advices and morals and no, when I was there, I went in a cycle, I did that, I did this. They don't like it. So, as she said, if your book has to be sold, write for the new generation, the new gen. Let us get some marketing skills from our Sandeep for the new generation and stop telling eulogies that, oh, I did this, I did this. Step into the shoe of the reader. The reader today, to bring the readers to IIM Bangalore Library, no, that is our target. So think about our PGPs. What PGPs would like to read today? And how I should write and how much I should write. They don't have the patience to read 200 pages. It could be a 50-page capsules, a small LinkedIn post. As we all talked about big publisher, hell with it, don't bother about that. Write a good LinkedIn post, small capsule for your friends. Get so many comments on that, you'll really be happy. I will share your opinion. That's right. We should do that. Thank you.
So
Okay,
I'm going
we
to...
have
But
time.
use the LCD principle. Laugh, cry, or dramatic.
Can I take 30 seconds? So Ayushi, I'll just give an example of a leading influencer who recently said that when he was younger, all he could afford was a 5 rupee ice cream and he had no other money. And it turns out on the side, he was visiting Europe with his family and he's seen all 30 countries. So the influencers come to IIM Bangalore, by the way. So just to answer your question, what matters is simple, is authenticity and honesty. And the one thing you should always assume, the consumer or the reader is not stupid. In all likelihood, they're smarter than you. And whenever I write a book, the editor always asks me a question, and this is something you may want to think about, is if someone is going to give up 10 hours of their life reading your book, what value add are they going to get from it? Whether it's technical knowledge, whether it's emotional knowledge, whether it's motivation, what fundamental human driver are you going to push the needle on in those 10 hours? If you can answer the question, you should write the book. It's as simple as that.
Thank you.
A last perspective on this, never be fake. And I think the word that is the best word that you should use is authenticity. Whether it is success or failure, people want to read about it provided you put an authentic account. So for example, I gave the name McDowell Signature, I put in my book. If you read it, it's not about showing off. It is about sharing how easy it is to give a name. And when I've shared my failure, it is not to demean myself, But I've said how foolishly I took that wrong decision. You shouldn't. So the thing is not about just success or failure. What people want to read is your authentic story. That's one part. The second part that you must remember is slightly moving away because you work in corporate. The second is now a new concept has come, which is called the failure resume. Failure teaches you much more than what success does. So if you go to Silicon Valley, people wear their failure as a badge. I failed 6 times. And these guys get a better job than guys who have never failed. But the point is that just failing in our country is looked down upon, but failing is not the issue. You can claim I failed. But if you go in front of Elon Musk and he asks you 3 questions, he'll realize you're a fake and he'll throw you out. The question is that please be authentic.
Okay,
Thank
in
you,
the
authors.
interest of time, we would take the questions in the break. I request the panelists to please stay back. I request Professor Rishikesh Krishnan to come on stage and present a token of felicitation to all our panelists.